Okay, welcome to the lesson today. We're looking at phrasal verbs with work today. I am writing a lot of exercises which I'm going to make available as a book for lots of different phrasal verbs, and I've suddenly decided to include a chapter on work phrasal verbs. I also will be including a chapter on be phrasal verbs, and so I'll make a video on that very soon. But the book will be ready in a couple of weeks or maybe a month. I'm just mopping up the details. I'm just finishing off all the last bits and pieces, and I'm doing the pictures. And I hope that the pictures will make a lot of these phrasal verbs very, very clear. So, good afternoon, Paulina. So work, let's deal with three prepositions with work that aren't really phrasal verbs but are useful to learn. So you work as plus profession, work as a doctor, work as a teacher, work as a waiter. You work for a company. You work for Google, you work for YouTube, you work for BP, you work for Shell, you work for Johnson & Johnson. Whoever it is, the name of the company, work for plus the name of the company. And we work in a building, yeah? So you can work in a hospital or you can work in a library. So work in plus building, work for plus company, work as plus profession. They're not really phrasal verbs, but I thought that might be worth remembering. Now, if you work something off, there's only a few nouns that will collocate with work off, and this is the problem with phrasal verbs. A lot of phrasal verbs, for example, brim with enthusiasm, you only see brim with a few different words. Enthusiasm is one of them. Work something off. It's usually work a debt off, work calories off, work weight off. And it means you reduce something through your work. Okay, so if you work off a debt, you owe someone some money, and instead of paying back the money, you work for them to work off the debt. And once you've finished, once you've done enough work so that the debt has been written off, and that's a good phrasal verb as well, write off a debt. It's also a collocation. If you write off someone's debt, you say that it's not necessary, you don't need it paid back anymore. And if somebody has worked enough for you, you can say, right, I write off your debt. You've worked for me, and so you've paid me back through work. So you can work a debt off, but you can also work calories off or weight off. If you go to the gym and work out, because work out without an object means do exercises at the gym. If you go to the gym and work out, you might be able to work off some calories. You might be able to work off a few kilograms, a few pounds. So please remember that work off, it means reduce calories or weight or debts by work. Okay, you work so that the debt disappears, or you work so that the calories disappear, the weight disappears. Okay, so there is a connection between work out at the gym and work off some calories. Now, if we work on something, we're trying to improve that something. You normally work on a project or you work on a dissertation. You're just trying to improve it in some kind of way. But you might work on your pronunciation in English. You might work on your phrasal verbs. Now, when you use it like that, it becomes very similar to work at something. The only difference really is when you're working at your pronunciation, when you're working at your phrasal verbs, you're continually making an effort to improve it. When I hear work at, it sounds like somebody is doing a lot of work constantly. They're working Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday at their phrasal verbs or at their pronunciation. So very similar, work on something, work at something, but this one just sounds like continually work on something. That's the only difference I can see or hear. Now, if you work together on something, you work on a project together, it means collaborate. That's all. That one's pretty easy, that one. Work together is exactly what it sounds like it means. So collaborate for work together, work at, continually work on something, continually make an effort to improve something. Now, if you work out, it means you do exercises at the gym. But if you work something out, it's the same as figure something out. It's the same as calculate. Yeah, so you might work out the answer to question 3, or you might work out how much tax you owe the tax officials. It means calculate in this sense. But there is a third meaning, and that's why I've got 3 here. If you work something out, very often work something out with someone, it means that something has resulted in success. So perhaps you're having arguments with your partner, but in the end you work it out. You work it out with her or with him. If you work it out, it means you're back together. You're not going to split up. You've worked out all your problems and they disappear. They fade away. All your problems fade away and you've worked things out. Your relationship is now successful. You're back together. But you can a lot of things can work out or not work out, and when they work out, they result in success. When they don't work out, they don't result in success. So you might say, my boss decided to, my boss decided to roll out a new product, to launch a new product, but it didn't work out. There were very few sales, nobody was interested, the new product didn't work out, it didn't result in success. So that is a third meaning of work out. If things work out, they're successful. If they don't work out, they're unsuccessful. Now, if you work something over, it usually means improve. You've still got this improve, and remember, quite a few phrasal verbs with work mean improve. But when you work something over, you improve the first draft. You're basically polishing something up, which is another good phrasal verb. You're basically reworking it so that it gets better and better and better. So I'm working over my phrasal verb book at the moment. I'm trying to improve on the first drafts. I'm trying to make sure I don't miss out any phrasal verbs. Trying to make sure that they're all inside. And it's quite difficult because there are so many of them. Now, if you work around something, work around something, it means you manage to find a way to avoid a problem and deal with some situation by avoiding that problem. Very often it's used at work. If a problem crops up at work and you work around it, you manage to avoid that problem. It's connected to the phrasal verb to get round something, which is also to avoid a problem or manage to escape a problem. And we often see it as a noun, a workaround. If you can find a workaround, great, because that will be a way of avoiding the problem. Okay, if you work something through or work through something, I'd say that we worked it through. No, in fact, I've written that wrong. I have written that wrong. Work through something means work on something difficult. Work until it is complete. Yeah, so working through a difficult exercise, for example, it means you keep going and going until you finish the exercise. Yeah, exactly, something like that. I'm trying to work around my income tax payment. That's a very good example. We're all trying to work around our income tax payments. Okay, if you work towards something, you make a gradual effort to achieve something that's difficult. So with certain students, I might say we're working towards C1 level or something like that. If we're talking about a level of English, we're working towards that. But you might say we're working towards, I don't know, it could be used in so many different situations, but perhaps if you're into sport, you might say I'm working towards, maybe you're a runner, yeah, and you run the 100 meters, you're a sprinter. You might say something like I am working towards completing the race in 11 seconds or 12 seconds. I'm not sure how quickly they run it, being honest, but if you're working towards 11 seconds, that means you're aiming at that particular time, and you hope to gradually achieve that difficult goal. Okay, so when you work towards something, you're gradually putting effort, you're gradually practicing something, improving something again, and eventually you get there. Now these last two are really quite useful. If somebody gets worked up, and that's the most, it's often seen like an adjective, to be worked up, to get worked up. It means to get angry or upset, to get worked up. Angry or upset, okay? It's one of those two. And if you work someone up, it's rarer that you see it as a verb. It's rarer, it's more often as an adjective kind of expression. But if you work someone up, then you make them angry. But usually I see this as he was worked up, she was worked up, I got worked up. Usually I see it more like an adjective. Now, if you work someone into a frenzy, that means you make them really, really, really angry or upset. It's very similar, and that's why I've put it connected to this one. So you could work someone into a frenzy. But there are a few other collocations with work up, which are well worth remembering. You might say, I managed to work up the courage to ask her out. Yeah, perhaps you have a crush on somebody, you fancy somebody, and you don't know how to ask them out, but eventually you work up the courage to ask them out. Then it means the same thing as build up, in my opinion. You build up the courage, you accumulate the courage, and eventually you have enough courage to ask her out. So work up the courage works very well. And I suppose there are some other things that you can work up. Work up the courage. You can also work up an appetite. If you're working and working and working, and eventually you get hungry because you've been doing so much work, that means you work up an appetite. So work up an appetite, build up an appetite would also be okay. So work up the courage, work up an appetite, work up some enthusiasm, I suppose you could also say, meaning become more and more and more enthusiastic. A few things will work with work up. A few nouns collocate with work up, but they very often mean when you accumulate courage until you have enough of it. So very similar to build up there. Okay, thanks for watching all of today's class. Please like the video, subscribe if you've enjoyed the class, if you've enjoyed the lesson. Please buy the book when it's out. It will be out in 2 weeks or so, and I will show it to all of you in the class to make sure that I advertise the product in these lessons. And yeah, I hope that you'll all enjoy it. I hope it will be just what you're waiting for. Okay, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all soon.